Hey friends, there's one big problem with DM screens that we don't really talk about, and that's that we can't see through them. I know that's really kind of the point, that the DM screen is there so that we can hide our notes and keep our dice rolls hidden and maybe keep people from noticing that really awesome mini that we're looking to spook them with later in the session after the pizza has arrived. But the real problem with not being able to see through DM screens is that we don't know what goes on behind somebody else's, and thus we don't really know what's supposed to be on there. And that's why Steven, or maybe Stefan, has asked what I keep behind the DM screen, or what it is that's most useful to have behind the DM screen in order to move my game forward. So today I'm going to rip the screen down and show you some of my favorites. Thanks for the question, and thank you to Matt Laser, Persiflage 101, David Mosley, and Spencer, the tank class supporters here on YouTube who get to decide what it is that you're going to watch. Please consider joining them if you want to have a say in that sort of thing. I have a handful of suggested items that I'm a fan of personally, and some of the links that lead to them throughout this video might be affiliate links. So if you would like to support the channel without it costing you a dime, then consider clicking on those in order to buy the thing you need for behind your screen. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge that not everybody's screen at the DMing table looks the same. Some of us are playing in a virtual space, some of us in good old-fashioned meat space, and some of us use customizable screens and others pre-packaged ones. And really, it doesn't matter what kind of screen you're using, my assumptions in this video is going to be that you have the ability to adjust the things that are behind your screen. I'm going to assume for the most part that we're talking about a physical screen, but I'll provide some digital resources as well that I find helpful. I'm going to go ahead and break this down into basically two categories: what goes on your screen and what goes behind your screen. When it comes to what goes on your screen, the sort of gut check answer, and the one that lets me off the hook the most, is anything that you need to refer to on a regular basis. I know that's total cop-out and feels like a bit of a letdown, but frankly, the truth is that everybody needs different information. Stuff sticks in the brain differently for different people, and there are certain details that you're going to have to refer to over and over again that perhaps I don't. And there are certain things that I have to refer to over and over again that you learned and had drilled into your brain 10 years ago already. This is just the way that our brains work, and so it's important that you realize that there is no one-size-fits-all DM screen or advice on DM screens. But a couple of the typical things that people forget on a pretty regular basis include things like the exact specifics of all of the conditions. I'm a big fan of having those easy at hand. Even though I know the conditions and I feel confident in my knowledge of the conditions, I like to make certain that I can refer to it when they're coming up, because there's a couple of little nuances here and there and situations that don't crop up as often as others that can be answered by having the actual verbatim text of the conditions available and readily at hand. Another one that pops up for me personally is I like the tables from the player's handbook on the weight and price of trade goods and equipment and adventuring goods and weapons and armor. I like to have that sort of information kind of easily at hand so that I can ad hoc decide on prices in the local inn, or how much it's going to cost you to sharpen your blade or replace a weapon, or so on and so forth. I like to have that on hand because it's easier for me if it's right there, readily available, and it comes up on a pretty frequent basis. I think that anytime that there are rules that give you trouble, it's important that you consider adding that to your DM screen. I have a video about a lot of rules that cause trouble for a lot of people, and a lot of those are common contenders, like the rules for suffocation, the actual rules for cover and concentration, the rules for grappling or jumping. Those are common additions on a lot of people's DM screens because they're common things that we make mistakes on. So anything that you notice that you have had to say mea culpa about after the session, consider adding it to your DM screen so that you don't have to say that again. Once you've gotten through these basics, and again, going with the assumption that you can customize your DM screen, even if it's just adding sticky notes consistently to it, then I like to have my list of secrets and complications behind my screen. And plastered up on it. My list of secrets changes every session. I try to write a new one in my prep phase while I'm doing my recap, and I list 10 things that the players might learn about current events and things that are happening around them, and I actually give an XP award for each of the secrets that my players discern during the course of their roleplay. But having those secrets there makes them readily available in my brain, in my face, helps me to pop them out there. Complications, likewise. Whenever the pace is starting to drag on a little bit slow, or it's been manic for a while and I need a complication that'll slow things down, I have a list of 10 complications that help me to decide which of these could fit into this scenario to improvise an adjustment to the pace and the tension of the encounters that are taking place. And I think that that's valuable real estate on the DM screen. It's valuable to fill that real estate with those items. Lastly, for me, lists of anything, honestly, are the kind of thing that makes its way to the DM screen. Though I do have some random books that are filled with random tables. In fact, I've got plenty of them with thousands and thousands, from a literal 1,000 titles of a book to hundreds and thousands of different names. I like to have names personally as something that I find difficult to improvise, but going out there and finding a random table book that has 100 items of anything that you find difficult to improvise at the table is a great thing that you can then cut and paste onto your DM screen, cross them off as you use them, and cycle more on there, even if it's just 1,000 book titles, for instance. And if you know you're going to be using those on a regular, you struggle to come up with book titles, then put a list of 10 of them on your screen and then cross them off as you use them and replace them as you go, and work your way through the book of random tables with all of these different options that you're including into your screen as you do. For me, tavern names are a struggle. Names of characters, NPCs, is a struggle for me to create without some kind of prompt or help. And so those are two things that I'll include readily at hand so that my screen can give me that improv prompt, and then I don't have to come up with it on the fly for myself. But you could also use guilds or quirks or songs. You might have town names or the contents of a bookshelf or descriptions of simple rooms. Any of these things you can get a list for out of a random table book somewhere and add them into your DM screen so that you've got them easily at hand for improvisation. Because I feel like the DM screen primarily is there as a tool to help you run the game that is supposed to supplement whatever module you're running or whatever creations you've already created. And so it should be there largely as an improv tool and for rules adjudication purposes if everything is going well. Behind the screen, in the physical space, one of my favorites is my 3x5. I have the 3x5 method. There should be a card for that somewhere that I keep behind my screen that includes the names of all of my characters, their armor classes, their passive scores, and the skills and tools and languages that they're trained in, all crammed onto a little 3x5 so that I can have some knowledge easily at hand about what's on the player's character sheets. And I update that basically every time they gain a higher proficiency bonus when I know all the numbers are going to change, and otherwise it just gives me a little snapshot of what the characters have knowledge-wise and ability-wise, and that makes it easier for me to call on them for their specific tasks or suggest that one character over another is useful, or just to give them a roleplay prompt. If I know they're trained in Arcana and I know their history because I study their character sheets and I've studied their backstories, then it gives me that, because of your history of training in the arcane, you know this, or the like. Just find it very, very helpful at the table. It's probably my number one tool behind the screen. Another tool that I find useful are these monster cards. They're put out by Gale Force 9, and they're an official Wizards product, but basically they're every monster in the monster manual broken down into groups and put on a card that looks pretty much like these guys. These are actually spell cards. They're also very useful for having behind the deck, but I think they're more useful to players than they are to DMs. But basically, you pull those guys out, and they have all of the information for your monster in an easy format, so that if you have a variety of creatures that you're using at the table, you don't have to have a dozen bookmarks in your monster manual and be constantly flipping back and forth between them. So those are a great product. Meanwhile, when it comes to behind my DMing screen on the digital front, I like to have the Great Book of Random Tables open, which I utilize again for the stuff that I would put on my DMing screen. On an online basis, I keep the entire book. You can buy it in a PDF form and print it out, or you can buy it soft or paper or hardback from different publishers and the like, but for me personally, I snip pieces of it for a physical screen, or else I keep the entirety of it open on the side as a digital product. Back to the physical, I like a 1-minute egg timer as a useful thing to have behind the screen, sometimes for telling people they need to make a decision in a certain amount of time, giving a countdown, just adding pressure in any fashion. An egg timer can go a really long way and is very versatile. It takes up very little space for the kind of value that it can add, and when you have it there, you'll find ways to use it. If you don't have it, you won't, and so having it is kind of a big deal for me. There's actually one other thing that I really love. Let me go grab it.
12 seconds later.
Ooh, okay, I'm back. I really enjoy having a Tarokka deck or the Deck of Many Things available behind my DM screen. And aside from the fact that I just tend to fall into the ASMR of shuffling cards, which is kind of nice. It makes a great prompt in order to pop up card and utilize that for any kind of divinatory scene, any kind of seance, any kind of spell casting of the divine nature. I like to use the cards to flavor the response that is given. I also sometimes use one of my online tools is going to Sly Flourish's Tarokka effects and randomly choosing a card and then applying that to the kind of change on the battlefield that is indicated there. And I just find that it's a useful thing to have for an improvisation prompt to push me forward when I might otherwise be feeling a little bit stagnant. I've had a number of different characters over the years from various tables of mine that have been themed down utilizing the Tarokka or things like that, and having these physical cards was a real boon there as well. But just flavoring your divination stuff, Tarokka cards are an excellent option. These ones are an official set as well. I'm not sure off the top of my head when I got them. I got them actually as a gift from one of my live players. So be that as it may. That's what goes on behind my DM screen, some of the things that I think are useful, and I hope it's been useful to you. And thank you again to the Tank Class supporters for deciding to touch on this topic, and I hope that you'll join them and that you can tell me down below in the comments what it is you want to hear about, and then boss me around in the members-only polls. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, happy adventuring.